Tom Richardson had always been a man of routine. Every morning at exactly 6:30, his alarm would go off, and he'd roll out of bed with the same mechanical precision he'd perfected over the years. Coffee first, always black, no sugar. 2 pieces of toast with butter, never jam. A quick shower, then down the narrow staircase that connected his small apartment to Richardson's hardware store below. 38. Tom had managed the family hardware store for nearly 15 years. His father had passed it down to him, and Tom had accepted the responsibility like he accepted most things in his life, quietly, without complaint, and with steady determination. The store sat on the corner of Main Street in their small town, a place where everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than wildfire. Tom's days followed the same predictable pattern. He'd unlock the store at 7 sharp, flip the sign, from closed to open, and settle behind the counter with his second cup of coffee. The morning regulars would start trickling in around 8 old, Mr. Peterson needing screws for his latest woodworking project, Mrs. Chun picking up gardening supplies, and the occasional contractor grabbing supplies for whatever job they had that day. He knew his customers by name, knew their projects, and could predict what they'd need before they asked. There was comfort in this predictability. Tom had built his entire life around routines that kept him busy, kept him useful, and most importantly, kept him from thinking too deeply about what was missing. The truth was, Tom had convinced himself that nothing was missing. He had his store, his small apartment above it, and his weekend fishing trips to the lake 20 minutes outside town. He'd wake up Saturday morning, pack his tackle box, grab his fishing rod, and spend the day sitting by the water in comfortable silence. Sometimes he'd catch something, sometimes he wouldn't. It didn't really matter. His sister Julie often teased him about his bachelor lifestyle. She'd stop by the store at least twice a week, usually with her 2 kids in tow, and somehow the conversation always turned to Tom's love life, or lack thereof. "You know, Tom," she'd say, rearranging a display of nails while her kids ran between the aisles, "Mrs. Patterson has a niece visiting from the city. She's a teacher, real sweet girl. I could arrange for you to meet her." Tom would always respond the same way, with a polite smile and a gentle but firm refusal. "I'm fine, Julie. Really, I don't need you playing matchmaker." But Julie was persistent, like their mother had been. "You can't live above a hardware store forever, Tom. Don't you want a family, kids, someone to come home to?" The question always made Tom's chest tighten a little. He'd busy himself with inventory or suddenly remember an urgent task in the back room, because the truth was he had wanted those things once. He'd wanted them badly enough to propose to someone, to plan a future, to believe in happy endings. Her name was Rebecca, and she'd been everything Tom thought he wanted. They'd met at a friend's wedding, and she'd been beautiful, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in his quiet life. They'd dated for 2 years, and Tom had been ready to give her everything, his heart, his future, his complete trust. The engagement had lasted 6 months. 6 months of planning a wedding, looking at houses, talking about kids and dreams and growing old together. Tom had never been happier. He'd started imagining breakfast conversations over coffee, weekend projects they'd tackle together, maybe expanding the store to include a small cafe where she could work. Then one Tuesday morning, exactly like any other Tuesday, Rebecca had called him at the store. Her voice was different, distant, like she was speaking to a stranger rather than the man she'd promised to marry. "Tom, we need to talk," she'd said, and those 5 words had changed everything. She'd found someone else. Someone more exciting? She'd explained. Someone who didn't spend his evenings reading hardware catalogs and planning inventory. Someone who wanted to travel, to experience life, to live in a big city where things actually happened. "You're a good man, Tom," she'd said. And somehow that had hurt worse than anything else. "You'll make someone very happy someday. But I need more than this small town can offer. I need more than you can offer." The breakup had been swift and final. Rebecca had moved to Chicago within a month, leaving Tom to cancel wedding plans, return deposits, and explain to everyone why the wedding was off. The humiliation had been almost as painful as the heartbreak itself. That had been 8 years ago, and Tom had spent every day since then building walls around his heart. He'd convinced himself that Rebecca had done him a favor. She'd shown him that love was unreliable, that people left, that it was safer to keep his world small and manageable. He'd thrown himself into the store, expanding inventory, improving customer service, and making sure Richardson's Hardware became the go-to place for anyone needing supplies within 50 miles. Work became his refuge, his identity, his excuse for not trying again. The evening routine was just as predictable as the morning one. Tom would close the store at 6, count the till, and head upstairs to his apartment. He'd cook something simple, usually pasta or a sandwich, and spend the evening reading or watching old movies on his small television. He'd learned to find peace in the silence, to appreciate the absence of drama or uncertainty. Weekends were for fishing, home improvement projects, or helping Julie with various tasks around her house. He'd become the reliable bachelor uncle, the one who fixed leaky faucets and assembled Christmas toys and never complained about being alone. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between customers, Tom would catch himself watching couples browse the store together. He'd see them debating paint colors or planning garden projects, and something would twist in his chest. He'd quickly busy himself with something else, pushing down the feeling before it could take root. Tom had become an expert at convincing himself that he was content. He'd tell himself that his life was good, that he had everything he needed. That love was for other people, people who were willing to risk everything for the chance at happiness. He'd built a life that was safe, predictable, and entirely his own. No one could leave him, disappoint him, or make him question his worth. He was the reliable hardware store owner, the helpful neighbor, the dependable brother and uncle. It was enough. Or at least, that's what Tom told himself every single day until the morning when everything changed. The rain had been coming down for 3 days straight, the kind of steady downpour that made the whole town feel gray and sleepy. Tom was restocking the plumbing section when he heard the bell above the door chime. He looked up from the pipe fittings he'd been organizing and saw something that made him pause. A woman stood in the doorway, completely soaked from the rain, holding the hand of a small girl who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Both of them were shivering, and the woman's dark hair was plastered to her face. But what caught Tom's attention wasn't their bedraggled appearance. It was the look in the woman's eyes, a mixture of desperation and determination that he recognized from his own mirror years ago. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Tom couldn't quite place. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car broke down in your parking lot. I don't suppose you know anything about cars?" Tom set down the pipe fitting he'd been holding and walked toward the front of the store. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see an old blue sedan sitting in his parking lot, steam rising from under the hood. "I know a little," Tom said, grabbing his jacket from behind the counter. "Let me take a look." The little girl tugged on her mother's wet sleeve. "Mama, I'm cold," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. Just a few more minutes, okay?" Tom noticed the interaction and felt something stir in his chest. "Actually, why don't you both stay inside where it's warm? I'll go check on your car." The woman looked relieved. "Thank you so much. I'm Lisa, by the way. And this is my daughter, Amy." "Tom Richardson," he said, extending his hand. "I own this place." Outside, the rain was coming down harder than ever. Tom popped the hood of Lisa's car and immediately saw the problem. The radiator hose had burst and there was coolant everywhere. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a quick patch job. The car would need to be towed to a proper garage. When Tom came back inside, dripping wet again, Lisa was crouched down next to Amy, who was examining a display of colorful electrical tape with the fascination that only a 4-year-old could. "Muster, what's the blue one for?" Amy was asking her mother. "I don't know, baby." "Maybe Mr. Tom can tell us." Tom smiled, despite himself. "The blue one's for electrical work. It helps keep wires safe and organized." Amy's eyes went wide. "Like putting toys away in boxes?" "Exactly like that," Tom said, surprised by how natural it felt to explain something to a child. "Different colors for different jobs." Lisa stood up, and Tom could see the worry creeping back into her expression. "What's the verdict with the car?" "I'm afraid it's not good news," Tom said gently. "Your radiator hose burst. You'll need to have it towed to Danny's garage down the..." Street, he's the best mechanic in town. Lisa's face fell. How much will that cost? Well, the tow probably won't be more than $50 since it's local. As for the repair, Danny's fair. He'll give you an honest estimate. Lisa was quiet for a moment, clearly doing calculations in her head. Amy had wandered over to a display of small screwdrivers and was carefully examining each one. Mama, look, they're all different sizes, just like my crayons. That's right, sweetie. Don't touch anything, okay? Tom watched this exchange and found himself curious about their story. There was something about the way Lisa held herself, alert and cautious, that suggested she was running from something rather than running toward it. Are you folks just passing through? Tom asked as casually as he could while dialing Danny's. Garage, actually, we just moved here, Lisa said. 3 days ago. I start a new job at the hospital tomorrow night. The hospital's a good place to work, Tom said. You a nurse? Yes, night shift in the emergency department. Lisa paused, then added, We came from Nevada. Needed a fresh start. There was something in the way she said it that told Tom there was more to the story. But he'd learned long ago not to pry into people's business unless they wanted to share. Danny's phone rang several times before he picked up. Danny's garage. Hey, Danny, it's Tom from the hardware store. I've got a customer here with a busted radiator hose. Can you send the tow truck over? In this weather, I suppose so. Give me about 20 minutes. Tom hung up and turned back to Lisa. Danny's on his way. It'll be about 20 minutes. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here. Amy had moved on to exploring the tool section, her small hands reaching toward a display of hammers. Mama, can I hold one? No, baby, those are too heavy for you. Tom walked over and picked up the smallest hammer in the display. This one's called a tack hammer. It's for very small jobs. He held it out to Amy. Want to feel how heavy it is? Amy's face lit up as she carefully took the hammer in both hands. It's not too heavy. That's because it's made just for delicate work, Tom explained. Big jobs need big hammers, small jobs need small hammers. Lisa watched this interaction with a mixture of gratitude and something that looked like sadness. You're very kind with children. Do you have kids of your own? No, Tom said simply. No kids, never married. Oh, Lisa looked surprised. Well, you're a natural. While they waited for the tow truck, Tom found himself learning more about Lisa and Amy. They'd driven for 3 days to get here, everything they owned packed into that broken-down car. Lisa had taken the job at the hospital site unseen, based on a phone interview and the promise of decent pay and benefits. I needed somewhere Amy could be safe, Lisa said quietly while her daughter was distracted by a spinning display of screws. Somewhere we could start over. Tom didn't ask about what they were starting over from. He could see the faint yellow edge of what looked like a healing bruise on Lisa's wrist, and he understood. This is a good town for that, he said instead. Good people, good schools. Amy will like it here. When Danny arrived with the tow truck, Tom helped Lisa gather her things from the car. It wasn't much, a couple of suitcases, some toys, and a small cooler. Where are you staying? Tom asked as they watched Danny hook up the car. There's a motel on Elm Street. We've got a room there until I can find something more permanent. Tom knew the motel. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the week, with thin walls and broken air conditioning. Not exactly the ideal place for a woman and small child to be staying. Listen, Tom said, surprising himself with what he was about to offer. I know this might sound strange, but I live right above the store. If you need somewhere for Amy to stay while you're working night shifts, I could help out. Lisa stared at him. I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Tom felt awkward but pushed on. I mean, I know you don't know me, but I'm not going anywhere. The store's been in my family for 30 years. I'm what you might call a permanent fixture around here. Amy tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, can we come back and see the blue tape? Lisa looked at her daughter, then back at Tom. I don't know what to say. Why would you help a complete stranger? Tom thought about it for a moment. Because 8 years ago, I needed help, and someone gave it to me. Sometimes that's just what people do. It wasn't entirely true, but it felt right to say it. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, "If you're serious about this, and if you really don't mind, it would help me more than you know. But I want you to promise me something." "What's that?" "If you ever need anything at all, you come to me. I don't care what it is or when. It happens. I'll find a way to help you, just like you're helping us." Tom looked at this woman who'd walked into his store less than an hour ago, soaking wet and desperate, and felt something shift inside his chest. "You don't owe me anything, Lisa." "Yes, I do," she said firmly, "and I always pay my debts. Promise me." Tom extended his hand. "I promise." As they shook hands, Tom had no idea that this simple promise would change everything. The first night, Lisa brought Amy to stay with Tom. Both adults were nervous. It was a Tuesday, and Lisa had to be at the hospital by 11. She knocked on the door that led to Tom's apartment at 10:30, carrying a small backpack and holding Amy's hand. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked for the third time. "I mean, I could try to find a babysitter, or maybe there's a daycare that takes kids this late." Tom opened the door wider. "Lisa, it's fine, really. I told you I'd help, and I meant it." Amy peeked around her mother's legs, looking up at Tom with curious eyes. "Do you have a TV?" "I do. And some books, too, if you like stories." That first night, Tom set up blankets and pillows on his couch, making it as comfortable as possible for a 4-year-old. Amy had brought her favorite stuffed rabbit, a worn, pink thing she called Buttons, and she clutched it tightly as her mother kissed her goodbye. "I'll be back in the morning, baby," Lisa whispered. "Mr. Tom will take good care of you." After Lisa left, Tom found himself alone with Amy for the first time. She sat on the couch, hugging Buttons, and looked around the apartment with wide eyes. "Are you scared?" Tom asked gently. Amy nodded. "A little, but Mama says you're nice." "Your mama's right. I am nice. And I'm going to make sure you're safe and comfortable tonight." Tom had never spent much time around children, but something about Amy's quiet bravery touched him. He made her a cup of warm milk and found an old book of fairy tales that had belonged to his sister when they were kids. "Would you like me to read to you?" he asked. Amy nodded eagerly, and Tom found himself reading The Three Little Bears in different voices for each character. Amy giggled when he made his voice deep and gruff for Papa Bear, and by the time the story was over, she was leaning against his arm, completely relaxed. "Can you read another one?" she asked sleepily. Tom read 3 more stories before Amy finally fell asleep, still clutching Buttons. He covered her with a soft blanket and sat in his armchair, watching her sleep and wondering what he'd gotten himself into. When Lisa returned at 7:30 the next morning, she found Tom making pancakes in the kitchen while Amy sat at the table, drawing pictures with crayons he'd bought at the store. "Look, Mama," Amy called out. "I drew Mr. Tom's store." Lisa looked at the drawing, a colorful mess of lines and shapes that somehow managed to capture the essence of the hardware store. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. How did it go?" Lisa asked. Tom quietly. "Great, she's a good kid. No trouble at all." Lisa looked relieved. "I can't thank you enough. I was so worried about leaving her with someone new." "You don't need to worry," Tom said, flipping a pancake. "She's welcome here any time." What started as a temporary arrangement quickly became routine. 3 nights a week, Lisa would bring Amy to Tom's apartment before her shift. At first, Amy was shy and stuck close to her stuffed rabbit. But as the weeks passed, she began to explore Tom's apartment, asking endless questions about everything she saw. "Why do you have so many books?" she asked one evening, pointing to the shelves that lined his living room walls. "Because I like to learn new things," Tom explained. "Books are like windows to other worlds. Can you teach me to read?" Tom's heart did something funny when she asked that. "I'd love to." So began Amy's reading lessons. Tom would sit with her on the couch, pointing to words and helping her sound them out. He discovered she was incredibly bright, picking up new words quickly and remembering everything he taught her. Lisa began to notice changes in her daughter. Amy was more confident, more curious about the world around her. She'd come home from her nights with Tom full of stories about what they'd done together. "Mr. Tom showed me how to sort screws by size," Amy announced one morning. "And he taught me that red and blue make purple." Lisa found herself looking forward to the mornings when she'd pick Amy up. Tom would have coffee ready and they'd sit in his kitchen while Amy played, talking about everything and nothing. "You're really good with her," Lisa said one morning, watching Tom help Amy tie her shoes. "She's easy to be good with," Tom replied. "She's curious about everything. Reminds me of myself when I was little." "What were you like as a kid?" Tom smiled. "Always taking things apart to see how they worked. My dad used to say I'd either become an engineer or drive him crazy trying to fix everything I broke." Lisa laughed. "Amy's the same way. Yesterday she tried to fix my hairbrush by taking it apart with a butter knife." These morning conversations became the highlight of Tom's week. He learned that Lisa had grown up in a small town in Texas, that she'd always wanted to be a nurse, and that her favorite color was green because it reminded her of the ocean she'd never seen. Lisa learned that Tom had inherited the store from his father, that he'd once wanted to be a teacher, and that he could build almost anything with his hands but had never had anyone to build things for. "I used to make furniture," Tom admitted one morning. "Tables, chairs, even a rocking horse once. I've got a whole workshop in the basement." "Who did you make them for?" Tom was quiet for a moment. "No one, really. I just liked making them. Most of them are still down there, collecting dust." "That's a shame. Beautiful things should be used, not hidden away." The town began to take notice of Tom's new routine. Mrs. Peterson, who ran the flower shop next door, would smile and wave when she saw Tom walking down the street holding Amy's hand. The mailman, Charlie, commented on how much happier Tom seemed lately. "Haven't seen you this relaxed in years," Charlie said one afternoon while delivering packages to the store. Tom realized Charlie was right. For the first time in years, he was looking forward to something. He'd catch himself thinking about Amy during the day, wondering what she'd want to do that evening. He started stocking children's books in the store, telling himself it was for other customers, but really hoping Amy would find something new to read. One evening, Amy asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Mr. Tom, why don't you have a family?" Tom paused in the middle of reading her a story. "What do you mean? Like a wife and kids? Don't you want a family?" Tom thought about how to answer. "I used to think I did. But sometimes things don't work out the way we plan." Amy considered this seriously. "Well, Mama says families aren't just about being born together. She says families are about people who love each other and take care of each other. Your Mama's very smart. So you could be part of our family if you wanted to." Tom's throat felt tight. "I'd like that very much." As winter turned to spring, Tom found himself changing in ways he hadn't expected. He bought a small TV for Amy to watch cartoons. He learned to braid hair after Amy asked him to fix her ponytail. He even started keeping juice boxes and crackers in his kitchen. Lisa noticed the changes too. Tom seemed lighter somehow, more present. In the moment, the carefully controlled routine that had defined his life for years was giving way to something more spontaneous and joyful. "You're different," she told him one morning over coffee. "Different how?" "Happier, more alive." Tom looked at Amy, who was sitting at the table making a tower out of sugar packets. "I feel different, like I've been asleep for years and I'm finally waking up." Lisa reached across the table and touched his hand. "Thank you for letting us into your life. Thank you for coming into mine." The simple touch sent warmth through Tom's chest. He was beginning to realize that somewhere along the way, his feelings for Lisa had grown beyond friendship. But he was careful not to push, not to assume anything. She'd trusted him with her daughter, and he wouldn't do anything to jeopardize that trust. Spring brought new challenges and new joys. Amy started asking if she could help in the store, and Tom found himself teaching her about different tools and supplies. She became his unofficial assistant, greeting customers with a smile and helping him organize inventory. "She's like your little shadow," Julie observed one afternoon, watching Amy follow Tom around the store. "Yeah," Tom said, and for the first time in years he couldn't imagine his life any other way. But deep down, Tom knew this happiness felt too good to last. He'd learned the hard way that good things had a way of disappearing, and he found himself holding his breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was a Thursday morning in late spring when Tom's carefully built world came crashing down. He was helping Amy sort colored washers into different containers when the bell above the store door chimed. Tom looked up to see a man he didn't recognize standing in the doorway, but something about Lisa's sudden stillness told him exactly who this was. The man was tall and well-dressed, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the small hardware store. His eyes swept the room until they landed on Amy, and his face broke into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "There's my little girl," he said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge that made Tom's skin crawl. Amy looked up from her washers and froze. The happy, curious child who'd been chattering about colors just moments before suddenly became very small and quiet. She moved closer to Tom's side. "Hello, Amy," the man continued, taking a step forward. "It's Daddy. I've been looking everywhere for you and Mommy." Lisa appeared from behind the counter where she'd been organizing receipts. Her face had gone pale, and Tom could see her hands shaking slightly. "Kevin," she said quietly. "How did you find us?" Kevin's smile widened, but it was the kind of smile that made Tom think of sharks. "Did you really think you could just disappear? Take my daughter and run off to this little nowhere town?" "She's not your daughter," Lisa said, her voice stronger now. "You gave up any right to call her that." "The law says different, sweetheart. I've been talking to some lawyers, and they tell me that what you did is called kidnapping. Taking a child away from her father without permission." Tom felt Amy's small hand slip into his, and he squeezed it gently. He could feel the tension in the room like electricity before a storm. "I left because you hurt us," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had to keep Amy safe." Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hurt you? I never laid a hand on you that you didn't ask for. And I certainly never hurt Amy. She's my princess, aren't you, sweetheart?" Amy pressed closer to Tom's side, and he felt a protective anger rising in his chest unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "I think you should leave," Tom said, his voice calm but firm. Kevin's attention turned to Tom for the first time, and his expression changed from fake charm to something much uglier. "And who exactly are you?" "Tom Richardson. I own this store." "Ah," Kevin said, looking around the store with obvious disdain. "The new boyfriend. I should have known. Lisa always did have a thing for men who couldn't provide for her properly." "That's enough," Tom said, stepping forward. Amy's hand slipped from his, and he could see Lisa moving to put herself between Kevin and her daughter. "Is it?" Kevin's voice was getting louder now. "You think you can just step into my family and play house? Lisa and Amy belong with me. I can give them everything they need, a real house, good schools, a future. What can you offer them? This?" He gestured dismissively at the store. Tom felt every old insecurity he'd ever had about not being enough, not being successful enough, not being the kind of man who could give someone the world. But then he looked at Amy, still hiding behind Lisa's legs, and something solid settled in his chest. "I can offer them safety," Tom said quietly. "I can offer them peace. I can offer them love without fear." Kevin's face darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Lisa, we're leaving. Now, get Amy and let's go." "No," Lisa said, and though her voice was shaking, her tone was determined. "We're not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice. I've already filed papers with the court back home. Custody papers. You can come back voluntarily, or the sheriff can come get you, but either way, you're coming back." Tom felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What kind of papers?" Kevin pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. "Emergency custody order. Seems the court agrees that Lisa is an unfit mother who kidnapped my daughter and fled the state. They're very interested in talking to her." Lisa's face went white. "You can't do this. You don't even want Amy. You just want to punish me." "What I want is my family back together," Kevin said, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "You have 24 hours to decide. Come back with me voluntarily and we can work this out like civilized people. Or wait for the law to come get you, and we'll do this the hard way." Amy started crying softly, and Lisa knelt down to comfort her. "It's okay, baby. Mama's not going to let anything happen to you. Don't make promises you can't keep," Kevin said. He looked at Tom with contempt. "And you, hardware store hero, stay out of things that don't concern you. This is between me and my family." Kevin turned and walked toward the door, then paused. 24 hours, Lisa. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." After he left, the store felt like a tomb. Lisa was holding Amy, both of them crying quietly. Tom stood there, feeling helpless and angry and scared all at once. "I'm sorry," Lisa whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have known he'd find us eventually. I should have kept moving." No, Tom said firmly. "You did the right thing. You found a place where Amy could be safe and happy. But now he's going to take her away, and there's nothing I can do to stop him." Tom knelt down beside them. "Yes, there is." Lisa looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "What do you mean?" Tom took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change everything, but he'd already made his decision the moment he'd seen the fear in Amy's eyes. "Marry me," he said simply. Lisa stared at him. "What?" "Marry me today, right now. If you're married to someone here, someone with ties to this community, it changes everything. It shows the court that you're not running, that you're building a stable life for Amy. Tom, I can't ask you to do that. This isn't your problem. It became my problem the moment I started caring about you and Amy, and I do care about you, Lisa, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time." Lisa was shaking her head. "You don't understand what you're offering. Kevin has money, lawyers. He'll make your life hell just for helping us. Let him try." Tom's voice was steady and sure. "I've got something he doesn't have." "What's that?" "I've got this community. I've got people who've known me my whole life, who know I'm a good man. I've got stability, a business, a home. And most importantly, I've got love for Amy that doesn't come with conditions or threats." Amy looked up at Tom with tear-stained cheeks. "Would you really be my daddy?" Tom's heart nearly broke. "If you want me to be, sweetheart. I would be honored to be your daddy." Lisa closed her eyes. "Tom, this is crazy. We've only known each other a few months." "I know. But sometimes you don't need years to know something is right. I know that Amy is the brightest part of my day. I know that you're the strongest person I've ever met. And I know that I'd rather fight for you both than live safely without you. What if we lose? What if the court decides in Kevin's favor anyway?" Tom took her hands in his. "Then at least we'll have fought together. At least Amy will know that someone was willing to stand up for her." Lisa looked at Amy, who was watching them both with wide, hopeful eyes. "What do you think, baby?" "Would you like Tom to be your daddy?" Amy nodded eagerly. "Yes, and then we could be a real family, right?" "Right?" Tom said, surprised by how much he meant it. "A real family." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she looked at Tom. "Are you absolutely sure about this? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Kevin will never leave us alone." "I'm sure," Tom said. "The question is, are you?" Lisa looked around the store that had become a second home to her daughter, at the man who'd shown them kindness when they'd needed it most, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Yes," she said quietly. "Yes, I'm sure." Tom smiled. And for the first time since Kevin had walked through that door, he felt like they might actually have a chance. "Then let's go get married," he said. "We've got a family to protect." Tom had never imagined that getting married would involve a rushed trip to the courthouse with a 4-year-old as their witness, but life had a way of surprising him. Within 2 hours of Kevin's visit, Tom, Lisa, and Amy were standing in front of Judge Henderson, a kind woman who'd known Tom's family for years. "Tom Richardson," Judge Henderson said with a smile, "I never thought I'd see the day you'd come in here asking for a marriage license." "Life's full of surprises, Your Honor," Tom replied. Holding Amy's hand while Lisa filled out the paperwork, the ceremony was simple but meaningful. Tom had called his sister Julie, who arrived with her husband and kids just as they were about to begin. Amy held a small bouquet of flowers that Julie had grabbed from the shop next door. and she beamed with pride as she watched her mother marry the man who'd become her hero. "Do you, Tom Richardson, take Lisa to be your wife?" Judge Henderson asked. "I do," Tom said, looking into Lisa's eyes and meaning every word. "Do you, Lisa Martinez, take Tom to be your husband?" "I do," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. When Judge Henderson pronounced them husband and wife, Amy cheered so loudly that everyone in the courthouse could hear her. "We're a real family now," she announced to anyone who would listen, but the real test was still coming. Kevin had made good on his threat and filed papers demanding custody. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, and Tom knew it would be the fight of their lives. Tom called the only lawyer he knew, Bill Crawford, who'd helped him with the store's legal matters over the years. Bill was honest about their chances. "Kevin's got money and a fancy lawyer from the city," Bill explained during their meeting. "But we've got something better. We've got the truth, and we've got this community behind us." That's when Tom discovered something amazing. Word had spread through town about what was happening, and people started coming forward to help. Mrs. Peterson from the flower shop offered to testify about what a good father Tom had become. Danny from the garage said he'd vouch for Tom's character. Even Amy's preschool teacher, Miss Rachel, volunteered to speak about how happy and well-adjusted Amy had become since living with Tom and Lisa. "I've never seen anything like it," Bill told Tom. "Half the town wants to testify on your behalf." The courthouse was packed on the day of the hearing. Tom had expected it to be just him, Lisa, and their lawyer, but the entire front row was filled with people from town. Julie sat right behind them, and even old Mr. Peterson was there. Wearing his best suit, Kevin arrived with two expensive-looking lawyers and a confident smile. He'd cleaned up his act for court, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and speaking in measured, reasonable tones. But Tom could see the anger in his eyes when he looked at the community support gathered for Tom and Lisa. Kevin's lawyer painted a picture of Tom as an unstable bachelor who'd gotten involved with a woman on the run. They questioned Tom's ability to provide for a family, his lack of experience with children, and his sudden decision to marry a woman he'd only known for a few months. "Your Honor," Kevin's lawyer said, "my client simply wants his daughter back. He's prepared to provide her with every advantage, the best schools, a stable home, financial security. Can the defendant offer the same?" When it was Bill's turn, he called witness after witness. Mrs. Peterson testified about watching Tom walk Amy to the park every weekend, how patient he was when she asked endless questions about everything they saw. Danny talked about how Tom had become a different person since Amy came into his life, more open, more engaged with the community. Miss Rachel, Amy's teacher, was particularly compelling. "I've been teaching for 15 years, she said, "and I've never seen a child blossom the way Amy has. She went from being a scared, withdrawn little girl to being confident and happy. That doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without love and stability." But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source, Dr. Wilson, the emergency room doctor who supervised Lisa at the hospital, had heard about the custody case and asked to speak on her behalf. "I've worked with Lisa Martinez for 6 months, Dr. Wilson said. "She's one of the most dedicated, caring people I've ever met. But more than that, I've seen her daughter Amy when she comes to pick up her mother after shifts. That child is happy, healthy, and clearly loved. You can't fake that kind of security." When it was Tom's turn to testify, he spoke from the heart about how Amy had changed his life. "I never thought I wanted to be a father," he said. "But Amy taught me that being a parent isn't about providing things. It's about being present, being patient, and being willing to put someone else's needs before your own." The judge asked Tom about his sudden decision to marry Lisa. "Some might say it was impulsive," she said. "Your Honor, I've spent 8 years of my life being careful, being safe, being alone. The moment Amy walked into my store, I knew my life was about to change. And when I saw the fear in her eyes when her father showed up, I knew I'd do anything to protect her. That's not impulsive, that's love." But the moment that changed everything was when the judge asked to speak with Amy privately. Tom's heart raced as Amy walked up to the judge's bench, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Amy," Judge Henderson said gently. "I want you to tell me about your life now. Are you happy?" Amy nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Daddy Tom, he reads me stories every night. And he's teaching me to read big words. And he lets me help in the store, and he made me a special stool so I can reach the counter. What about your mother? Are you happy with her?" "Mama works really hard to take care of me. She says Daddy Tom makes her smile more than she used to. And now we have pancakes every Saturday morning, all three of us together. Amy, your other father wants you to come live with him." "How do you feel about that?" Amy's face grew serious. "He's not my real daddy. He used to make Mama cry. Daddy Tom makes her laugh, and he never yells or breaks things. He just hugs me when I'm sad." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you, Amy. You can go sit with your parents now." Kevin's face had gone red during Amy's testimony. His lawyer tried to object, claiming the child had been coached, but the judge overruled him. When Judge Henderson delivered her decision, the courtroom was silent. "I've heard testimony from both sides," she said. "While I don't doubt that, Mr. Kevin Martinez loves his daughter. Love must be demonstrated through actions, not just words." She looked at Tom and Lisa. "What I see here is a child who has found stability, love, and security. I see a mother who has worked hard to build a new life for her daughter, and a man who has stepped up to provide the kind of loving home environment every child deserves." The judge's gavel came down. "Custody remains with the mother, Lisa Richardson. This case is closed." The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Amy ran to Tom and Lisa, throwing her arms around both of them. "We won! We get to stay together." Kevin left the courthouse without a word, his lawyers trailing behind him. Tom felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that they'd won, sadness that it had come to this dot in the months that followed. Tom discovered what Lisa had meant when she'd promised to repay his kindness. She didn't just keep house or help. With the store, she transformed his entire world. She encouraged him to expand the business, suggesting they add a small garden center in the spring. She helped him reconnect with old friends he'd lost touch with over the years. Most importantly, she gave him confidence to dream again. With Lisa's support, Tom started offering woodworking classes in the store's back room. Soon, he had a regular group of customers who came not just for supplies, but for the sense of community he'd helped create. Amy flourished in ways Tom had never imagined. She became the unofficial store mascot, greeting customers with a bright smile and helping them find what they needed. She learned to read fluently and discovered a love of math that surprised everyone. One evening, as Tom was closing up the store, Amy came running in from the back room where she'd been doing homework. "Daddy Tom, look what I made," she said, holding up a drawing of their family, 3 stick figures standing in front of a building labeled Richardson's Hardware. Tom knelt down to look at the drawing more closely. "This is beautiful, sweetheart. But who's this?" He pointed to a 4th figure she'd drawn. Amy grinned. "That's the baby brother or sister Mama says might come visit us someday." Tom looked up to see Lisa standing in the doorway, smiling and holding her hand over her still flat stomach. "Surprise," she said softly, as Tom pulled his wife and daughter into his arms. He thought about that promise Lisa had made so many months ago. She'd said she would repay his kindness someday, and she had, not through any grand gesture, but through the simple act of loving him completely and allowing him to love her and Amy in return. He thought he was saving them, but they had saved him from a life of comfortable loneliness. In helping Lisa build a new life, Tom had discovered that the greatest love stories don't always begin with passion. Sometimes they begin with kindness, grow through trust, and flourish through the daily choice to put someone else's happiness before your own. Richardson's Hardware was no longer just a store. It had become the heart of a family, the foundation of a community, and the proof that sometimes the most beautiful promises are the ones that change everything.